Good morning. It is 7:01 a.m. on Wednesday, March 9th, 2016. I'm Christiana Ellis, and this is 5 more minutes. And I just got up. That's the part that I didn't say. I was up late because after the improv show, we all went out to get a couple of beers, and so I'm not like hungover or anything, but I was certainly out later than my typical bedtime for a weeknight. The show went great. Um, it's definitely something where the rational part of me was right. Despite having felt some anxiety leading up to it, leading up to it, that's the word. Leaving up to it would be like if I was abandoning responsibility and saying, oh, well, I'm going to leave it up to the show. Although, in some ways, no. Um, yeah, so the show was a lot of fun, and it's just as is my typical pattern. Um, I felt most nervous about it between about 24 to 12 hours ahead of time. Um, and then it started kind of cascading down until the point where there was a little bit of anxiety slash excitement just before the show, but mostly once I was there with my classmates and hanging out again, it's like, oh, right, I know how to do this. I know these people. And that's not to say that like every single scene in the show is perfect or anything, but there was a lot of good fun stuff in there, and we had a good time. And the audience seemed to like it, and so I'm happy. It's one of those cases where I think it's important for me to recognize that mental pattern so that I can push through it in future instances, because there's an impulse that I've talked about on these videos before that I sometimes have where there's something that I do want to do, but I start feeling nervous or anxious about it. And that inspires me to say, oh, well, maybe I'll just stay home. I don't need to go to that thing. Or, I'm not feeling good. Oh. But if I push through it, I have a great time. Now, that's not to say I have to always push through it. It's not always a failure if I don't. But because, the anxiety is obviously there too to serve a purpose, it's quite possible that there could be a situation that's really not a good idea and maybe I shouldn't do it, right? Um, but I think usually I can kind of recognize when that's the case. You know what I mean? It's like, what is it that I'm nervous about? If I can put my finger on, it's like, oh, this guy, I don't, he seems kind of sketchy, or I don't know, last time we did that, it wasn't fun, or something like that. But when the anxiety is just like all self based, like it's like, oh, well, what if I look like a loser, and it's usually not even verbalized like that. But the point is, if I'm asking myself, what am I nervous about, and the nervousness is focused around something about me, that's usually an indication that it's just this generalized anxiety and not something that I really need to worry about. And so I had a great time, and it's just like I said, I wanted to kind of talk through those feelings leading up to it, just because it's something that I regularly go through. Probably lots of people do. And I need to be self-aware and in recognizing that, so that the next time I'm in that spot, I can just say, remember that show, that improv show? You were feeling anxious about it, and then it was fine. Yep. See, that's why I think, well, there is that saying, the unexamined life is not worth living. That's extreme, but at the same time, I do think, maybe it's the scientist engineer part of me that always just wants to try to figure out, okay, that went pretty well. How could it go better next time? It was good, and yeah, it just so the whole thing was a very fun experience. I'm glad I did it. I'm gonna continue to do it. I need to figure out what's the next step though, because as it as it stands right now, I'm actually not signed up for a class this next session, so I'll have to figure something out. But in the meantime, I'll talk to you guys tomorrow for 5 more minutes.